there. So we are beginning now with the session on how to choose the right grant application. This is much of the same information that we gave during the grants orientation webinar, but we thought we'd go through it again. Some things take repetition. It comes at you pretty fast, so this may be able to give you a little more information. Good morning, I'm Jackie Downing. I'm the Director of Grant Making and Nonprofit Support for the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. We're here to help you decide which grant process or processes are right for you. There are times you can come from more than one different grant. I'm going to ask you that if you have a question, you write it in the chat, not the question and answer box. It's going to be hard for the three of us to manage two different sources. So if you have questions, please do put them in the chat. We're going to take questions a couple of times during the presentation at certain stopping points, and then we'll do that again at the end. If we see a question that we think we're going to cover later on, we're going to skip that question because we will be getting to that information. I'm going to turn it over to my friend, Valerie Knight.
Thank you, Jackie. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Valerie Knight. I'm the Program Officer for the Valley Community Foundation, and I look forward to working with Jackie today to help give you some tips and techniques that you can use for choosing which process to apply for. The very first thing that we want you to do before you apply for any grant application, especially the ones for the Community Foundation and the Valley Community Foundation, is to do your research. Look at different sources of information, websites, reports, and talk to others about the work that you want to do. It is really important for you to understand your funders, any funders, internal process. And that's certainly why you are all with us today, to understand the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven's process and the Valley Community Foundation's process. Also, determine the need for your program or organization. It is great to have data to support whatever work that you're going to be doing. Number two, identify collaborators and partners, both private and public. There are many folks out there that you can collaborate with: community leaders, other funders, government entities, other nonprofits. There are probably many more people than you would even consider. Just put together a list of who you might be able to work with and start from there. Number three, structure your program and your request. Define your goals, your outcomes, and your measures. Prepare a preliminary budget. Write an implementation plan of how you're actually going to work on the project that you're talking about. Develop a fundraising strategy, which includes many different sources of support, and then select potential funders, such as the foundations that we're working with today, and others who might be able to help you with the work that you're doing. Then write your proposal. Before submitting your proposal, have someone else read it and make sure that all possible questions are answered. Many times we all have jargon that we use in the work that we do, and we use acronyms and we use all different kinds of language. It's important to make sure that whoever is looking at your proposal understands the work that you're trying to do. Remember, the first stage of the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven and the Valley Community Foundation for the process for responsive grants is read only. No one from either of our foundations will call you with questions. So all information to score your application needs to be in the proposal.
Thank you, Valerie. I will answer Louis Spielman's question in the chat, and that is, are the slides available for download? They're not available at this time, but we will send you a copy of the slides at the end of the presentation if you've attended today. So you will get a PDF of the slides for today. And Stephanie Chung is also supporting Valerie and I in this process. She'll take care of getting those slides to you, and she's taking care of so much more this morning. So we're grateful to Stephanie for keeping us all on track and keeping us moving. So what you see before you are what we call the guiding principles for nonprofits. You won't see these as direct questions in the applications, But this guides the work that we do. So we want you to keep these things in mind as you prepare any application that you're working on for us. These are the things that are important to us at the Community Foundation, to the Valley Community Foundation, and to this community in our grant making. So these are things that you really need to be looking at. First is your vision for the community. You have to have clear goals and objectives for how you are going to impact the community you serve during the term of the grant, and those goals must be informed by a planning process that includes input from stakeholders with lived experience. We want to know that you're working with the people that are going to take the services and that you have communication with them. We'll also take a look at social and structural determinants of equity. This is health access and quality, education access and quality, basic needs, social and community context, economic stability, neighborhood and built environment. You have to determine how your mission and its work contribute to improving the social and structural determinants of equity. Again, not a direct question in the application, but understand how you contribute to that in our community. Accountability. You have to have a really good ongoing basis of evaluation for the impact of your work and the people it serves and the community that it serves. So make sure that within your writing, there's a good sense of how you're measuring what you do. You have to have a good vision for your organization. Clear goals and objectives for how to maintain or improve the organization itself, its governance, management, operations, and programs during the term of the grant, which have been, again, informed by a planning process with stakeholders. You have to have a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You must have policies and procedures that respect and advance diversity, equity, and inclusion within your organization and within the community that you serve. Members of your board and staff should reflect the diversity of the people that you serve. And vitality. You have to have sound practices for financial management and include a lens for sustainability in your planning. If you're asking for money for one time to get a program going or to keep your operation going, we want you to have that vision and vitality to know that there's sustainability of what you're going to do when our money runs out. Where are you going on the next step? So these are the guiding principles to keep in mind as you move forward.
The competitive grant eligibility for responsive grants is very simple. Applicants must be tax-exempt organizations under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code or have a fiscal sponsor or any other applicable section that is nonprofit under the IRS code. Applicants must also provide services in at least one town of the 20-town region or one of the 5 valley towns for a Valley Community Foundation request, but can be located outside of our 20-town region. The 20 towns include Ansonia, Bethany, Branford, Cheshire, Derby, East Haven, Guilford, Hamden, Madison, Milford, New Haven, North Branford, North Haven, Orange, Oxford, Seymour, Shelton, Wallingford, West Haven, and Woodbridge. Applicants must adhere to a policy of non-discrimination. Projects that do not generally receive consideration include religious activities, endowment campaigns, travel, previously incurred debt, and funding deficits. Requests for capital projects such as building, equipment, vehicles, and other depreciable items will be accepted only as part of the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven Small Grant Program and may include requests that are related to organizations managing the impact of COVID-19. Applicants who are past grantees of either of our foundations must be in compliance with all grant reporting requirements.
So these things that we're reviewing now are those things that are related to all of our grant making processes, not to any particular one. So as you think through, as we go through the rest of the slides, we're going to think about which applications are right for your organization. And the things to keep in mind as you're going through, deadline versus rolling. Some of the applications we'll talk about have deadlines. Others are open applications for any time. You have to consider what your time frame is. If you're ready to go with your project now, you may be able to meet a deadline that's soon. If not, you may want to opt for a rolling process. Eligibility criteria. Not all processes are open to all organizations, so listen carefully to see if the one you're thinking about fits your organization. There are some that are Valley specific, there are some that are New Haven specific, and some that are combined processes. Most are combined processes. So make sure you're listening for the right things. The level of funding that you're needed. Remember, as the grant award size goes up, so does the level of competition. So apply for what you need. If you can achieve your goals with a smaller grant, consider a process that might give you a faster and more favorable answer. The type of funding that you're needed. All of our responsive grants, the largest grant process is general operating support, totally flexible dollars. Small grants can be given for capacity building or general operating or project program specific. So think about which type of funding that you need. If you need capacity building only, if you need a project, you want to limit it to a specific program, a small grant may be better for you. When's the funding needed? Our responsive process, the application is due February 24th. The answers won't come until July. If you're planning a summer program, it will be too late for you to come into that process. So you may want to think ahead and apply now for next year, or you may want to opt for a small grant program or a different program that will give you an answer faster. And 1 year or multi-year. The only multi-year process we have is the responsive grant process. You can apply for 1, 2, or 3 years. It gives you stability and an ability to plan, but it's also more competitive and takes longer to get an answer. So think about those things as you're going through, as we go through the next set of slides to let you know. There used to be 3 years receiving, then 1 year off. Does that still hold? I do not believe that was ever our policy, and there is no such policy, so you can apply at any time as long as you don't currently have a grant in the responsive process. So this is a list of grants that's available in our combined processes. Both Valley organizations, Valley-based organization, Greater New Haven-based organizations can apply for any of these grant opportunities. The responsive grants, general operating support only, very flexible dollars. As I said, the deadline is February 24th to apply, 5 p.m. Our system shuts down at 5:01. There is no extension. 5 p.m. is the deadline. Think ahead. Animal shelter grants are ongoing. Those are for nonprofit organizations, independent, not municipal entities, but independent nonprofits that give shelter to animals. Racial equity and creative healing through the arts. We'll go through more of that on a slide later. A deadline opens on February 1st, and the deadline is May 2nd. The BIPAC-led leadership cohort, we'll talk more about that on a slide later. And the consultant support program, which is also ongoing. And again, we'll talk about that later.
The next set of grants are our competitive grant opportunities for both Greater New Haven and Valley-based organizations. As you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, Small Grants has an ongoing deadline for Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. Sponsorships are ongoing as well. The Quinnipiac River Fund had a deadline of January 21st, and the Neighborhood Leadership Program had a deadline of January 19th. We have those up on the slide to remind you that if that is something that you might want to be considering for next year, now is the time to be doing that, right? Even though the deadlines have passed, it's important to plan ahead. So kind of tuck that deadline into the back of your mind, because we will have similar deadlines for those two opportunities in 2023. For Valley Community Grants, the deadline is March 4th, as you can see, at 5 o'clock. Again, as Jackie said, that is a hard stop, and the application shuts down at 5 p.m. The rest of all of our programs, sponsorships, needs, and opportunities, and the COVID-19 Response and Recovery Fund are all ongoing and flexible at this point. We tend to give responses back within 30 to 60 days of receipt of application. Sometimes it might take a little bit longer. So those are the two competitive grant opportunities that we have from both the Community Foundation side as well as the Valley Community Foundation side. Responsive grants, as Jackie has said, are general operating support grants to further the general mission of and work of an org rather than for a specific purpose or project. In last week's Grant Seeker webinar, we got a lot of questions about, well, can I do this with this? Can I do this, that with it? Absolutely. It is for you all to look at what your needs are in terms of flexible sources of support. You do not need to identify any particular use that it will be applied to. Applicants must have a published Give Greater organization profile. An organization cannot apply if it has a current general operating support grant that extends beyond 2022. And our average grant size for general operating support grants are between $20,000 and $35,000 per year. As Jackie said, if you're looking for multiple year support, that is what an annual type of average grant size would look like for responsive grants. The application link is available on both of our websites right now. And as we've said before, 1, 2, and 3-year grants are awarded. Awards are made in July. The important thing to know about responsive grants is that it allows you to be who you are as an organization. So just keep that in mind when you're applying for this grant.
I do see that we have one hand raised. I don't know if there are any other questions that have come in, but I do see that we have one hand raised. Lydia, I'm going to give you the ability to talk. So why don't you ask your question at this point before we move on?
Sorry, that was an accident. My apologies.
Okay, that's okay. Just didn't want to let it go if you really had a question, because that was a good stopping point.
Well, the question, I think it was answered, that was put in the chat. If you received the grant, did you have to wait the 1 year off? I think you said you do not. Is that accurate that you do not, or do you have to wait before reapplying?
You do not have to wait.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay. Let's go on to the grants for racial equity and creative healing through the arts. These are again available to Valley-based and Greater New Haven-based organizations. These grants were created to help support the creative and equitable recovery of our region, to employ local artists at a living wage, and to create connections with audiences and supporters. Also to help organizations collaborate with Black, Brown, and Indigenous artists to support creativity in our region, and to create anti-racist organizations which actively contribute to equitable arts ecosystem. This is for arts organizations and organizations with a history of arts programming. If you're just thinking about starting in the arts, this is not for you. This is for some organizations and for individual artists with a history in the arts. Awards range from $5,000 to $20,000 for each of 2 years and can be used for new or existing projects. The projects are things that break down racism, support learning for youth, and provide opportunities for collective mourning, comfort, and healing, both from racism and from COVID. The applications are open on February 1st. They're not yet on our website, but they're open on February 1st. It is a process that you can apply until May 2nd. These decisions are made by a community panel, which is assembled by the Arts Council of artists, arts patrons, and arts administrators. This is not a community foundation decision. That panel will meet after May 2nd to make the award decisions. The first stage is a simple Google Doc that goes to the Arts Council, and the panel considers that. And then if you are passed through the panel to the second stage, then you will be able to fill out an application, which is really just capturing information into our grant system about what you've already told us the project is going to be. So the panel will make those awards, and they will make their decisions by June or July, depending on the volume of applications that come in. They take their due diligence and spend lots of time understanding the projects, understanding the artists, and what the outcomes are expected to be. The BIPAC Cohort for Nonprofit Leadership. This is a 2-year program in leadership development for emerging leaders who are people of color. These are folks who are currently employed by nonprofits in sort of a middle management role. They may be a program director or development director, finance director, somewhere in the program staff, a middle manager type person who aspires to being an executive director. We will be taking 10 to 12 people in the 2022 cohort. We are currently working with 10 people in the 2021 cohort. This is really about the applicant themselves. It's not about the organization. The organization does not apply, but there is a 2-year $15,000 grant that goes to the organization that employs the person. This is not developed for founder-led organizations. If you are the founder of an organization and you want to make that organization stronger by participating in this program, this is not for you. We have other programs for that. This is for people who want mobility in the nonprofit sector, who are working in an organization but aspire to be the executive director of a different organization to be able to take that bigger chair someplace else. We are developing a leadership pipeline for nonprofit leadership with people of color. If you are interested in this program, the applications, let's see, I don't have the dates here, I'm sorry. So what we do when we focus on the application, we focus on the attributes and qualities and aspirations of the person, not the organization. That's the BIPAC Cohort for Nonprofit Leadership. And the New Haven Small Grants Program. This is for nonprofit organizations serving in Greater New Haven or the Valley. I'm sorry, yes, nonprofit. This is for New Haven-based organizations. This is discrete project funding. You can come in for 3 different types of applications. There's general operating support, project or program, and capacity building. General operating support is just that, very flexible. Again, as Valerie said, we're not asking you what you're doing with it. We just want you to fulfill your mission. I'm sorry. The project support or program support is specific to one project or program that you're operating. And in that case, we do ask for a budget to understand how we're impacting that program or project and what you're expecting out of that program and project. And capacity building, we define that as short-term infusion of resources for long-term infrastructure development. So if you're hiring a development director to raise more money so you can do more programs, that's not capacity building, that's an ongoing expense. But if you're hiring a fund development consultant to help you develop a fund development plan for the year, train your board how to raise money, and then that consultant goes away and leaves you stronger, that's capacity building. So those are the 3 types of applications. All 3 are up to $15,000. They are 1 year old, and it's a rolling application. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to turn around that application. And in order to get that application, you have to reach out to Denise Canning. She'll talk through and make sure you're applying for the right one. And New Haven-based sponsorships. You'll hear also from the Valley about their sponsorships, but New Haven-based sponsorships, it can be, I'm sorry, it didn't move. There we go. One day they are one-day events. This is not for a long-term ongoing program. It's a one-day or one weekend event. It can be a fair or an in-person fundraising event, or it can be a virtual event. It can be a festival, not a conference or multi-day programs. It can also be neighborhood events that are happening in your neighborhood, very small scale. The funding is up to $2,500, but the $2,500 is generally reserved for those organizations with milestone anniversaries. It's not an ongoing, an annual event wouldn't get $2,500 in support. They're rolling applications. We ask for 4 weeks to make that decision. The committee meets about once a month in order to make those decisions. So give us at least 4 weeks of advance notice. I will tell you, for small grants and for sponsorships, they tend to run out of money before the year is over. So if you know you're going to have an event in September, there's no reason you can't apply for that sponsorship now. So please do apply as soon as possible. Those applications are available online at our website.
In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with the remaining slides that relate to the Valley grants that we have available, because there is a separate section for the nuts and bolts that I would encourage those Valley organizations that are on the call right now to attend later on this morning to listen in more detail about the community grants, needs and opportunities, and our sponsorship process, which is very similar to what Jackie has just talked about. And the sooner that you can get information into us, the better it will be. So please come back in just a little bit and we'll give you a little bit more detail about the Valley grants. The last thing that I am going to be talking about right now is the login screen for online applications. For those of you who have been with us for quite some time, you know that we have been using Blackbaud and everything is online. There is a sample screen as to what you look at when you are accessing our applications. If you have not applied to either of our foundations since July 1st of 2019, you will need to create a new account and a new password because your existing account and password are no longer active, and the applications are posted on both of our websites.
If you're coming into our responsive process, you will have to create a Give Greater profile. Give Greater is a wonderful resource for the community. Donors use it to take a look at who's doing what good work. You can create that profile by contacting Stephanie Chung, or if you go to givegreater.org, there is a button right on the profile, right on the homepage that says open a profile, and you can get started there. It takes about 6 to 8 hours to complete a profile for the first time. You'll need lots of financial information. You'll need to make some statements for your organization. But once you've done it, it's pretty easy to keep updated every year. We ask that you do that so that we can keep your financials current so that donors can make informed decisions about their donations. And I'm going to ask Steph if there are any questions. I didn't see any in the question. Okay, nothing in the question and answer. We're just about at time. I did want to share this slide. So Valerie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jackie. This is our resource slide that we will make sure that we get out to everybody. As you can see, all of us are listed. We're a team that works together to provide you the information that you need for any of the grant applications that you are applying for from either the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven or the Valley Community Foundation. We'll make sure that this gets out to everybody. So I just like to say thank you very much for joining us. For those of you who are interested in learning more about the Valley Community Foundation grants, please come back in a little bit and join us then. And we thank you all for your attendance this morning.
We do have one question that has come through on the chat. What if we do not have any financial information for Give Greater due to establishing the 501c3 this year? In order to have a approved publicly viewable profile on givegreater.org, we do ask that you provide at least 1 year of financial information. So we will need at least one Form 990, Form 990N, and at least one audit or year-end financial statement for your most recently completed fiscal year. And that financial statement can be a profit and loss sheet, a balance sheet. If your organization does not have at least 1 year of completed financials, reach out to me and we can talk about how that might be addressed.